House of Eidolons character creation guide. Wanted to build a quick start guide to get everybody up and running and playing House of Eidolons as fast as possible. Any of the documents we talk about today you can find over through our website at eidolonsrpg.com. And at our Patreon, you can download the character sheet itself, quick references. It's also where you can purchase our core rulebook. I would also direct you over to the Play Store and this website, charactersheetonline.com. You can find it in the, I believe in the app or in the Play Store for Android, but it's actually a character sheet, a digital one that you can use. We're updating and pushing this up to be public. You can find it in their workshop. Let's back up a little bit here. Their workshop has a bunch of different apps that people have put together for different games, but if you scroll down, we're going to be right over here, House of Eidolons with our book cover. You can come in here and plug that into your phone with folks running the character sheet online, and you can do what you want there. Once you're in there, it's going to look something like this. You can come into the bottom of each one of these. This is on your phone app or Android or in the browser. And start changing whatever attributes and adding what you need. We've got notes and psionics and inventory, and all your armor and health and all that fun stuff is here. So it's quickly accessible through this app that we're releasing. So that's where you can find all this information. If you have any other questions, obviously you can reach out to us here. Join us on Discord. We play about every other Sunday we try to play. Holidays get a little wonky with dates and playtimes, but keep a lookout for our notifications in our stream. And let's get to the character creation. Now let's do a quick short overview of how to create a character. In future videos we'll go a little more in depth. I'm going to break apart in those videos this character of mine. It's a level 1 character starting out, very fun and entertaining creature that I haven't had a chance to play with yet, but we'll go through Wayland here in a future video. But for now we're going to look at chapter 3, creating characters. Just like I talked about in the beginning, you can go get all the character sheets, all the quick reference documents, and buy the copy of the core rulebook. That's on our Patreon. You can find that on our website, eidolonsrpg.com. So you'll come in here, start in character 3, character creation, and then of course we'll look at our character quick reference. This guide is going to help you build a character out very quickly and efficiently with all the relevant information that you're going to need to set up your character sheet. So let's go down the actual list of what we're going to go into here. So when you're creating a character, think about the team you're going to be playing with, not necessarily what they're going to play, but the people you think about the people you're playing with, and then to some extent the character that they want to play, and figure out what you want to bring to the table. Or if you just have a wild hair and want to play this kind of character in this kind of setting, go ham, doesn't matter. Our plug and play system lets you do that. We're very flexible. I don't think we've come across someone that's given us an idea that we haven't been able to build with the plug and play system we put together. So figure out your class and your subclass based on the character that you want to play, the story that you want to play. So in this case, we've got in this case, we'll be using a sprawl doc and a cyber doc. So we're going to go down to chapter 3. And in here, this is where you're going to find all the different classes and origins and how to build your character, class points, focus, abilities, dice. We'll get into that here really quick. But for instance, as you scroll down, you'll start seeing these tables. Here's our street samurai. We start talking about the different builds for them, net diver, and so on and so forth. In our case, we're going to go down to cyber doc. And then as you scroll through this, if I put this to let's do 2-page scrolling here. There we go. Go down a little faster. Once you get to the bottom of the character chapter, you'll see we have a section here about contacts, anatomy of a contact, using those. But then you'll get to the bottom of this. This is building your character. This is all the stuff, step by step, what you need to do right here in depth. Everything from attributes to skills to spending your money, building contacts, which we'll talk about here in a minute. That's all at the bottom of this chart or chapter 3, after all the different characters and character classes. So we have our attributes we need to allocate. So in here, we'd go down here and we'd allocate everything according to how our character is going to play. So in my case, I'm using drones. I'm going to be more of an intelligence-based character. So in this case, as we outline here, our attributes, no attributes above 4, no attributes below 2 when starting out, and you can't go above 6 in your character limit for one attribute and 5 for all the others, right? So we show our limitations here. And in this case, because of my origin, my attributes and skills change a little bit. Skills are kind of the same thing. No skill above 3, no skill above 6 from the career limit. No skill above 3 is for when you character creation, right? And those skills are all filled out here. So in this case, you set up your skills based on your default. Then when you choose your class and origin is when you start making little changes. We'll go with origin first. So in my case, I'm omnipotent, and I'll be running drones, the drone modification option. So what that means is that because I'm omnipotent, I also get +2 skills under my intelligence attribute. So one of these, or any number of these, I can bring them up to 3 if I want. I can add +2 skill points in here, right? So keep track of those things. We cover them here with your origin. And then if we scroll down, we can start seeing the class choices. We have a whole quick breakdown here that shows you in the pages in the book I don't want to edit it. Here's where it is in the book and the pages. We've got all of our different classes here. We're going with the Sprawl Dock Cyber Dock, even though we're using drones, and the default thought would be the mechanic, which is built for doing drones, but I'm doing something very specific with this character, but we'll talk about that later. So you choose your class, you choose your origin, and you start filling that out. And then when you choose that class, you automatically get your primary ability, which is like your character's passive, your class is passive. And then the first ability you choose in the list of your character. So in my case, I'm going Cyberdoc. So the first skill I get by default is Cybernetics Savant. You can find that down here. We'll go and find the precog. Where are you? Cyberdoc. Oop, maybe farther. I think it's after this. There we go, Sprawl Dock. So Sprawl Dock down here, right? And you can always search this. We go down Cyberdoc, and here's the Cybernetics Savant. Here's all the stuff that you get with it as a brand new character. Now, in my character, the reason I'm going this route, the reason I chose the Sprawl Dock, is this guy is going to control drones, but he's also a repo man. So in our world, one of the skills under Cyberdoc is like medical checks, repossessing, cybernetic limbs or organs or all kinds of fun stuff. Like that's a whole type of play style in the cybernetic world, and we're leaning into that. So, but going back to our character creation, we've chosen our class, we've filled in our abilities, right? We've filled in our stats. Now let's look at what these stats mean up here. So as you fill out your attributes versus your skills, these will mean something. The culmination of strength and dexterity equals your endurance. Okay? That's for rolling tests of literal endurance, the word. Yeah. Then when you add up your wisdom and intelligence, that equals your cognition for mental checks, physical mental checks. But this cognition also means your edge dice number. Edge dice in our game is not only a way to modify your rolls as a player, as a character, but also acts as almost a fuel, gasoline, to fuel abilities and cybernetics and different actions. There's all kinds of stuff for it. So what an edge dice is, and we talk about this, it's a D4, and you have 6 of them that you can spend throughout any mission. And of course that edge dice number can go up depending on your class and modifications and cybernetics and mutations, all kinds of stuff. Subclass, origin, all these things. They factor into creating how much edge dice you get. And you can spend them at any time to roll a d4 and add that value to a roll. So this can make or break things. This also means your enemies get edge dice too. You could be rolling against another Eidolon and have almost a roll off. And then there's items and abilities and mutations that can affect edge dice values. There's a chess mutation that if you roll an edge dice, let's say you roll a 3, that actually adds a +1 to the value, so it's a 4. This can become incredibly important when you're trying to squeak by those really needed rolls. So yeah, and edge dice and your capstone, which everybody gets one of them per mission, only one, those reset to full after every mission, so keep that in mind. The capstone is your holy crap, this needs to happen roll. Like if you need to set off the giant bomb or make the car jump across the bridge, or have enough strength to hold this dangling teammate from a helicopter or hovercraft, like the capstone is a d20 that you can add to any roll one time per mission. and it allows you to do some wonderfully fun stuff. So yeah, that's the basis for building out that character. You have your skills, your ability, or your attributes and your skills, edge dice capstone, who your character is, your class, subclass if you're farther along, but we'll get into that later. This is just so you can register how many class points you saved up. These are markers just so you can see how many, if this was, if I get the second skill in there, the Repo Man skill, I can choose that. And that just signifies those things. You can copy paste anything in here that you need. It's the whole skill set. Here's where you can put some crypt, because again, remember, as a starting character, you start out with 6,000 crypt, and then based on your origin, you get something that modifies that. So in my case, I'm an omnipotent, and I'm using the drone setup, right? So I'll have the cores upgraded to rigged cores so I can control my robots, and then I get 5,000 in drones and modifications. So that means my character, Daedalus, had 11,000 crypt to work with, okay? In other cases, let's say you want to be a more cybernetic character, or even if you want to be a scion, mental mind powers right here. This isn't going to get any of that extra money, right? You've just got your amplifiers and the tag, and all this stuff is very, very valuable, but you're not going to get any bonus income starting out versus your outside of your base 6,000 crypt, right? So yeah, there's all kinds of reasons, and each one of these origins is balanced out to meet this roughly the same value of each origin, right? They all have the same, almost the same crypt value if you were to break everything down based on its acquiring it individually. So we're very careful about how we balance these out. So not one is better than the other. They do different things very dramatically for a reason. Like my current character, Riken, he is actually a chimera because I'm leaning into my mutations, and I want all those extra bonuses that I can get, those extra attributes that I can play with. This allows me to have a nice spread across all of my abilities, dice-wise. So, yeah, that's the baseline for building a character. That's the bare minimum you need. We've got the character creation reference, quick reference, and then of course in Chapter 3 here, we do the full breakdown of how to put together, choosing your class, choosing your origin, allocating your attributes and skills. All your edge dice stuff, and then we'll get into contacts and all these other things a little later. All right, so now let's talk about spending some of that crypt. You've got 6,000 baseline, and then whatever your origin changes, whatever additions you get from there. In my case, I'm omnipotent, and I'm going with the drone setup, so that means I have 5,000 in drone additions that I can make, plus my 6. And in this case, I'm actually going to be a pretty... for this example with Daedalus, he's actually going to be a pretty simple dude. Like, he does not have a lot as himself. It's all wrapped up in his drone or the drone's weapon. So in this case, as we look over, I think we have some programs too. Yeah, we ended up running some programs with him. So he can actually hack systems, and he can even add DOTs like burns and stuff and overheat things. It's really, really fun. But I'm a big Net Diver fan, but that's also a great way to supplement your class too in this technological world you're playing in. So and I think I had, there's a reason I had enough 12. I had 12. I'm not quite sure why. I think it was because I was going to drop it on my team. Either way, we've got 11 to play with. We don't actually need some of these things, like the scalpel is just thematic because he's a repo doc. But we're going to look at and that's just a little Tonto, but we're going to look at the breakdown of this actual polearm. So if we go into House of Eidolons, we go to our chapter on equipment. So this is a heavy polearm. So we go into heavy weapons. We've got our polearm here for 2,000, and we chose, I believe, the point. Yeah, we did the point loadout. So with the point loadout, that gives me +1 damage and adds Pierce 3, and I've got that right here. Here's the baseline with that Pierce 3, and there's the cost of it. We're going to keep going down. I end up getting the long shaft that gives an extra 5 feet. That's right down. So as we get out of the weapons, we go into the modifications. So we've got our weapon section here, melee weapon modifications start here. So let's see, what do we got here? We want so there is where's the long hilt? There it is. There's the long shaft, the extra 5 feet, so that's 1,000 there. And then we go down to the amplifiers, and we go to the puncture piston, which is right here, costs 1,000. Requires the point. I believe that's right here as well. Yep, puncture piston is down here. go. I actually skipped the barbed hooks, which we'll go back up and find. And the barbed hooks are right here. Okay, so that's 1,000 for that. And here's all the stuff, which I ended up copying because I like to have it on my sheet so you can read it. Barbed hooks, basically, so the drone that I've created, and we'll go down here a little bit, is going to be basically this scary spider drone. Do I actually have the stats in here? Maybe I don't. Oh, I do. So I'm going to get the actual visual here for you. So the artwork that we ended up doing, it's got spider legs underneath this entire cloak, but it walks upright to be less, I guess, unsettling. Not that that's already unsettling. So as we go into this drone here, he actually has an active camouflage system that I spent money on to make him almost invisible, hard to see, so he's hiding in shadows. He's got spider legs, the arachnid. So basically you've got this dark, cloaked, shadowy arachnid spider drone that can just crawl on walls and hide, and it wields this giant, terrifying polearm that can not only go through a wall, like solid structures, like through a door, but it also has barbed hooks. So whatever it hits, it can grapple and pull back with it. So basically it's this terrifying shadow spider that just yanks you into the darkness. And then he's all about, for all of this too, that drone hits super hard. He's wielding a giant two-handed polearm that normally you as a player would wield, but instead it's on the spider drone that I'm controlling with my mind. Now, keep in mind, as a drone controller, when you're actually controlling these drones, your character is not conscious. So Wayland, for example, if I was coming into a mission with this setup, he would find someplace safe where he could literally, his body would just pass out, basically, because your brain, you're taking your consciousness and putting it in a drone, or splitting it up against multiple drones. Or in the case of the mutagen druid, you can do the same thing with pets and familiars. So there's lots and lots of options, but that's how you get some of that equipment going. That's how you build an item out real quick. It's a little complex character with the drone, so don't worry too much about that right now if you're starting out. But yeah, there's so many things you can do, so many fun things you can build, and we'll continue with some more videos showing you all how to build some cool characters. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of the things I didn't cover in the previous section with equipment. We're going to talk about mutations, programs, cybernetics a little bit, give you an idea of how those work. They're all pretty similar. That's kind of how we built this plug and play system, where everything just kind of talks to each other. But in this case, we're going to go through it a little bit. So in Wayland's situation, he's an omnipotent. We're going to take this information here, that 5,000 and the core change, and we're going to go through what that means and how to get to those sections and how to find that information. So we're going to go back to the book. Before we get into Wayland stuff, we're going to go through genetic engineering. One of the things to keep in mind when gene tailoring is a section of your body can only have mutations or cybernetics, not both, right? So, and that's a little tough, or it may feel bad if you're going genetics with your torso, because your torso is two sections, but if one of those sections has a genetic mutation to it, the other section also can't have cybernetics in it, even though this torso is split up into two. So keep that in mind. You're not really losing out. I felt initially, or we felt maybe you'd be missing out on some like options, or would feel like weak or underdeveloped. That's not the case. I'm playing in my main character right now, heavily mutated. Man, so powerful. So don't feel like you're missing out by not having, by losing the ability to have two sets of cybernetics on your torso. You can't have those two sets. You can't have cybernetics on separate parts of that torso, right? So if you have in the bottom part of your torso a mutation, you can't have cybernetics in the top part, but you can have two mutations there. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we go into gene tailoring, it's pretty much the same thing. You just choose whatever section the mutation takes up, for example, and then that would be a mutated portion of your body. And if you're leaning into mutations like the Mutagen Mancer, which is what my current character is, you can swap those things out constantly for edge dice and make all kinds of changes. So, for instance, my character Riken, which you can watch on our Sunday games, currently is running two big vine whips. And these vine whips can mutate in or out, or vine lashes here. They do piercing, and they can do shred damage. They can inject poison or acid. And these take up one of my wrist sections, right? It'll tell you what its requirements are when it comes to its section, and then like other things you need. So in this case, you need to have a chest piece, the Dyadic integration mutation, in order to actually use the vine lash properly. So yeah, that's pretty cut and dry when it comes to mutations. Section has a mutation, doesn't. Mutagen Mancer can swap them out. We cover how to actually remove mutations if you don't have it, if you're not a Mutagen Mancer, so you can actually change and regrow segments or all kinds of fun stuff. So even to the point where, as a Mutagen Mancer, if you focus in it, you can actually have your head blown off and regrow it possibly. Like it gets really, really cool. So there's so many things to do with gene tailoring. It's very, very fun, very powerful, and is kind of a sleeper in my opinion. It does not sound as crazy as you'd think, but man, does it gets fun. So now let's talk about cybernetics. This will be one of the more entertaining sections that'll have a lot that you can break down when it comes to options and things that you can install and the variety of builds you can make. The possibilities are endless. It's incredible. So as we outline here in chapter 5 in cybernetics, we talk about each section of your body and how much of it can be modified, keeping in mind that the cybernetic that you see down here, right, like the vibro claws, that doesn't count as the base cybernetic segment, right? So for instance, if you want to install those claws, okay, it's going to give you a requirement, cybernetic hand segment only. So that means the segment on your hand will need to be cybernetic. Well, in order to make a cybernetic hand, you need to upgrade it to a class D, which is one subsegment. And in order to do that, it's going to cost you 1,000 crypt. Okay. If you want to upgrade each section of that one part of your body, that's the price. Let's see, I think we have it. It was right in here as I was just going through it. Here it is. Sorry. I have closed. There it is. Basic cybernetic install when blind. So for each section, it's going to cost you 1,000 crypt. Okay. So if you want those claws, you need to have a class D cybernetic installed for 1,000 crypt. So that means you need to have 1,000 for the installation and 1,000 for the vibro claws in order to have those and use those. If you want a full arm that's completely cybernetic to mount and install everything you could ever imagine, that would be a class S cybernetic. That means all 5 sections of your arm, so for example a limb here, hand, foot, lower arm, all 5 sections cybernetic class S is going to cost you 5,000. Okay? This is why you'll see in the origin, in the vat birth, they get a little extra money to play with, because it changes. That baseline gives you hard and soft points and some values there, but it's literally just basically replacing that portion of your arm. Now, we talk about hard and soft points, everything you get to and we talk about choosing that with each cybernetic segment. That's important to keep in mind, or to keep yourself aware of, is your hard and soft points. And we go down to the installations. Once you have the installed portions of your body that you want to use, you can go crazy with it. So keep that in mind. You don't have to upgrade a whole leg to cybernetic to use, like, say, leg modifications. It'll tell you what parts of that leg need to be upgraded. So for instance, these striders here, you need a class C cybernetic foot and ankle segments only to install these striders. So that means you need to spend 2,000 to have that foot cybernetically enhanced, and then another 1,000 for striders. So the balance, but once it's cybernetic, you can uninstall those things, all that fun stuff. Once it's cybernetic's there, unless you want to regrow a limb, that's a whole different ball of wax, but simple and easy. You'll also notice under character creation in our actual free love, we give you 5 sub segments, so you can, dealer's choice, put them where you want. You could have your upper arm, or your calf on your left leg. It doesn't matter. It could be your torso, your neck, your head. There's all kinds of things, but we give you 5 plus the 7,000. So like I said, we keep all of these. The value of each origin is roughly the same. So don't ever feel like you're missing out, but that's why we do it that way. Because you do have that extra cost of having cybernetics. So we make sure that when you start, you don't feel lesser than any of the other types of origins, right? They all are built to do a specific thing. You wouldn't want to go latent psionic and then just lean into cybernetics, for example, because you don't get any bonuses to it. You can just use your psionic stuff. So that's generally not the route you'd want to go. Not saying you shouldn't go cybernetics, but as an origin, if you want to say be a psionic, and then eventually have cybernetics, which we have players that are currently doing that, that's okay. It just doesn't mean that's not your character's first level. And we're going to talk about net diving and programs. This is one of the more complex portions of building a character. If you're going to be using some of the stuff, you require core processors and stack drives to be able to do this stuff. You still have access to the overlay, basically your augmented reality eyeballs that allow you to see things happening in the world, or make calls, or write emails, or send messages. Like, you get all that super techie in your brain eyeballs type stuff. But if you want to start really effectuating the world, turning stuff off, opening doors, hacking cameras, hacking other people's cybernetics, a good example of my net diver in our previous campaign, as we were testing the class out and playing and adjusting stuff, we're in this major boss fight, and one of these characters runs at an incredible speed, like 60 feet per turn, because she has got these crazy cybernetic legs. Well, partially through the fight, I realized this, and I ended up, after a couple turns, hacking into her legs and shutting them off. So as she's running away, she just drops to the ground. Like, the power of net diving. Heck, one of our first tests, one of our players literally saw a grenade in the boss's, or a couple grenades, I think, in the boss's like pants on him, on his person, and she hacked into him and ignited the grenades on the individual, and they blew up and crit him, and just finished the entire encounter. So there's so much power in net diving, and it's not a like solve all problems class, but I tell you what, it'll be super influential whoever plays one. And then the way we handle like subspace and being in that matrix space, that digital space, is really fun and entertaining. But I want to talk about going into programs a little bit, because it is pretty complicated at first until you understand the core of it. So you have stack drives and core processors, and these are the basic things that allow you to run programs and maintain programs, store them. So with the core processor, it gives you the ability to run those programs, and the stack drive stores those programs. You can have them offsite in other like offsite servers, and there's all kinds of stuff you can do, but we cover it all here in this net diving chapter. We dive deeply into the mechanics and how it works, and how to understand what all this stuff is here in chapter 7. So I'm going to go down and give you a quick overview of some of these things. ICE is our like security software. So these are the things that either you as a player, or a corporation, or a house, or someplace that needs to keep an area secure digitally, that's what ICE is for. We've got the basic, and this will be your basic combat foes as a net diver. These are be your your default mobs to fight that you'll encounter playing the game. As we go farther too, one of the hurdles we figured out was, as a net diver, even in a full party, you feel kind of alone. Because unless you have other net divers in the party, you're generally not going to have somebody in submersion space with you. So we created the actual fire systems to counter the ice systems. And think of them as your own personal set of pets that are designed to work as programs and do all kinds of different things. So as a submersion space character, or anybody, you don't need to have it, but submersion space is the net diver's strongest forte when in that matrix space. These are super helpful to have, and you get some of them. So we go through all the program different types and the symbols involved. These are all going to change. Keep that in mind. We're doing a book update. We're going to make this far more readable. This was, as again, as fast as we can get this book out to you is what we did. And we put these programs together. Now, all these programs do various things, and we talk about the tags over here. So we talk about trace value, deployment, execution time, duration, integrity, program strength, targets, and upgrade options. So trace value is what you, as a net diver, when you run a program, it leaves trace. It's how security systems will start to realize someone's here. So there'll be a trace threshold on an area. So for example, let's say 35 is the trace value for this facility you're infiltrating. As you break that, that means that the on-site security and digital security or physical security is like someone is hacking our system. Someone is here. We don't know where you are, what you're doing, or who you are, but you have made yourself known because you've made enough noise. So trace is very important. There's lots of ways to reduce trace. There's lots of ways to generate trace and use trace strategically to help you. And hinder the enemies, or in some cases just make the whole place a mess. You know, light 10, 20, 30, 40 programs off and just have all of the security, have Talos Judicial, which is like our big bad security force that comes from the government or corporations. You know, light that candle and call Talos Judicial right on top of the target, and they're just going to wipe everything out. It's crazy. So you can abuse it too, or get yourself in trouble. They're not to be trifled with. But so yeah, these tags go through what all of those are. We talk about what each one does and why it's important. And if we look at some of these programs, for instance, this boost program here, this is pretty simple. It's 2500 grip, boost amplifier, and what this is going to do, receives that bonus for a selected attribute. So if I buff you, let's say you're a dex-based stealth character. Well, at that point, I've amped you, and now your 4 to dex is a +5. That's a whole other dice roll. Incredibly useful, but that's also why it's got a trace value of 15. Very, very expensive, makes a lot of noise, but makes your party members pretty crazy. And the fun part is what these all mean in lieu of this program. So if you're in subspace as a net diver, sorry, not 15, that's dirty. 10 trace is the amount. So you want to amp your roguish like assassin character with that +1 to dex. Okay. So it's going to leave 10 trace. It's going to take one of your actions to perform this program. Okay, so pretty straightforward. It happens instantly. That's your timing. The buff lasts for 3 turns. Integrity, if needed, will increase. That would be what someone would counter hack with. Like, how strong is the resilience of this program to maintain itself, whether just on its own or by external forces or assault, right? So that's its strength, its defense, if you will. The strength of defense. The strength itself is the power of the program. So if you amp this up, which we don't have, you can't amp that strength, but that bonus is +1 if you were to somehow, one of these other programs has a different buff that increases the strength value of this program. It doesn't exist, mind you. We'd have to go to something else that shows a better one. Like here in Boost Optimize, this gives you +1. So so for this is skill bonuses instead of attributes. Not nearly as powerful. There's a reason it's 4 trace, right? But this could be up to +3 in a skill of the buffed user's choice. So yeah, that's what that is. That's the strength of the program, whether that means damage or its ability to affect someone, all kinds of things. This is targeting, okay? This is important for programs because, well, there'll be 3 numbers here. First number is when you're in the real, when you're awake and in the overlay and executing these programs while you're conscious, okay? Overlay engineers, the overlay net divers that work from that AR standpoint, you're not going unconscious, you're on the field, you're with people, are super powerful, super smooth, very, very helpful. I love playing an overlay engineer. But that means this amplifier can target 1 person or thing, okay? If you're in subspace, the second number means you can apply that amplifier to 2 of your party members if you're, submerged at this point, which has got incredible value because those 2 targets, that doesn't change the trace value, right? So you've got 2 people that are getting +1 to whatever stat they like. You got your upfront heavy guy with like a big old mace, and you got your stealth rogue with like a sniper rifle or a Tonto, and the rogue wants dex, and the warrior wants strength. Well, the buff, they get to choose. So you just 3 turns gave them a bonus dice to their main stat of their choice. Incredibly powerful. And that just happens in a turn. You literally just buffed your team. And that's the essence of programs. It's the same way across the board. Like if we come down here and go, let's find Slate. Because Slate is kind of like your auto attack well, it is your auto attack as far as we're concerned when it comes to being a net diver. There's Slate. So this is what you get just as a baseline. And it does, 2 trace, 1 sub action. So that means you can cast it twice. in one of your turns, happens instantly, has a strength of 2, and that can definitely be buffed. And there's other things that make that stronger too. And this is basically, think of it as an auto attack. In this case, you know, it just does straight SP damage to whatever ice or program or other net diver exists. You know, there's just all kinds of stuff, and these programs you can chain and combine. We've got them built like that. We've got trap programs that you can put a virus diffusing modifying program inside the trap, and when it's set off, it spreads like overload or overheat to 4 targets, and then that just continues to tick and spread to other targets in range. It's really expensive, and you have to be a very, very good net diver to do some crazy combos like that. All right, so let's talk about drones and vehicles. We're just going to focus on drones right now. Vehicles are kind of still in their infancy. It is a wonderfully fleshed out working system. We just haven't had a lot of cases to use a heavy vehicle system. We are actually planning on a possible specific campaign in the future, very heavily vehicle based. So we'll be digging into that a little more in the future here. But as far as drones are concerned, drones are just like you as a character. Think of them as an extension of yourself in a lot of cases, especially if you're like a mechanic, or in Wayland's situation, he's a cyber doc, but he still uses rigged cores to control a drone. But these drones are going to have specific amounts of hard points and placement for abilities and skills. So in my case, in Wayland's case, he's using a medium drone. That means I have 2 hard points and 2 soft points in my and these are my AI skills and attributes. So what this means is this AI attribute, that means you're rolling 3 dice on whatever you're doing, unless you have other modifiers that can change that. That number can definitely go higher. It's just not cheap. So as we go into modifications, remember, we're running 2 hard points, 2 soft. So in the case of Wayland's drone here, let's go down to the actual drone section. There you are. See, so we're running active camouflage, and looks like arachnid, and that's just baseline. Yeah, so, and then what that means is in the case of the active camouflage, which is what makes me hard to see, not invisible, but just hard to see, it requires 1 soft point. So that means I have 2 to work with. That's open and ready to go. Plenty of space to install that. And then in this case, the arachnid, that looks like that's just a swap on legs. That's not actually changed. So my character, as we go forward, I have 2 hard points available and 1 soft point for putting in more modifications in. Eventually I'll have different arms or sensors, or like this is the active camouflage system. And then down here we've got our mobility modifications, so they could have, you know, jet engines or hover jets, or, you know, quadruped sprinting legs like a cheetah. You know, or of course your tank treads, in my case the arachnid, creepy spider. So yeah, drones are the same way. You just take your actual hard and soft points and then add your bonuses to them and go from there. We talk about how to work with drones and how to sync your cognition with it, but that's a whole different thing. This is mostly about character creation. We're just going to dive into that. The same thing applies to pets too. We're going to bypass vehicles right now. We're not going to dive into that. So pet familiars, basically the exact same setup. We have different kinds of pets that do different things. So we've got different slots instead of hard points and soft points. And then some of these can get pretty complex. Like one of my test characters used the mutagen druid, and it was the dire ability that comes with the primalist that makes my the character I have, or the creature that I have, the pet, 1 size larger, and then of course have all kinds of extra bonuses. You'll see that in the class here. I wonder if, I don't think I have it in the quick reference for the druid. Yeah, so primal mind, the pet familiar control. I'll get into that here in a second once I get done or I'll show you the rest of this here. So with in this case, let's just use the bear as an example. That's a good baseline. Now this doesn't mean it has to be an actual bear. It could be a variety of whatever interesting creature that you have, you know, in your world. So for example, if I go into, is it Odin? Is this where I put him? Yeah, there's Cord. So Cord himself, and this is something I actually drew, you know, we call it a shellhound, and this is actually a character in our world that initially used the bear profile as its baseline. And then you just call it whatever you want. Doesn't need to be a bear, but just use those stats, use the training, use all that fun stuff. Training's a big deal with pets. That's a very important part of getting good with your actual pet itself. It takes time. How to train your Komodo dragon, as it were. Um, and it costs money too if you want to speed some of that up. So we use the bear profile initially, and then here's where you start adding those bonuses to him, right? So for instance, if we take the bear, what do we got here? Training 5, modification slots 4. Okay, so you got 4 slots. Here's your stat lines. There's your training. And with those modifications, you can start adding these things. They take specific mod slots, right? Part of one of those mod slots is the dire form. This was one of the things I added there, so that turns that medium-sized pet into a large pet. At which point I can then, in my case, could eventually ended up riding it and had a giant mounted like machine gun on his back, because we ended up putting in place or items and modifications that let you mount a saddle and then also have mounted weapons or tactical shields on top of these animals and these creatures that are your pets. I think we have another player that's just starting out, and she runs a fairy dragon, and it has like laser eyes and can just cut through things. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, pets are really fun, a little more complex than drones. And then the nice part is, if I go up here, let's go back to our druid here. Or mutagen druid. As long as maybe this one's burn out here. Nope, too far. I want to go back up. There we go. Nope, there we go. Mutagen druid. All right, primal mind. So one of the things that you can do, and this is one of the things I love so much about the primal mind, is your first skill in primal mind is really big. It's primal syncing, and I think I have Cord's page up here. It's easier to read here. So if I come down here, there you are. Oh, I guess it's not easier to read. That's okay. So I can use my full action to cognitively sync with my pet familiar. This is normally how you do it. So you would go limp in your body because you're using your mind to control these creatures. So generally you find if you're on mission on site, you go find a place where you can hide, or a bar, or a closed, a restaurant, with some place where you can basically be unconscious and not draw attention because you're outside of your own body right now. And that can get you hurt. That was actually one of my issues in a couple missions. I ended up losing a leg because I was unconscious and still allowing stuff to happen to me, and you take huge negative penalties if you are getting hit while you're synced with anything, or in my case I was in subspace as a hacker. Same idea. So as this primal mind, what you can also do is, if we go down here, it's called bond syncing. So alternatively, if you don't want to use these initial rules here, you can basically have a dire pet that you don't have to be cognitively synced to and lose your own consciousness. So in my case, I had this giant shale hound, and it was just my buddy that I could be fighting with next to. You can have just this. And with this case, it's 150 feet of the user. And I can mentally communicate with my bond synced pet. So if you got that fairy dragon and that's a small creature, it would suddenly, grow a whole size and become this much bigger fairy dragon with laser eyes. And because of how, or at least how I would do it, you bond sync and it's with you, and then I go down and put the dire form. It applies to the tiny or small and moderate size. So you can't put it on the large, obviously, that'll get crazy. Yeah, so the large creature takes up a 10 foot by 10 foot space. So that's a 2x2. So that's 4 squares on a standard board. So yeah, those large creatures can't get dire form. It just will become, you're bringing an elephant to a mission. It's just not reasonable. Or whatever creature you may deem necessary. And again, GM discretion. If you guys want to bring massive beasts into battle, that's entirely up to you. But our baseline, we try not to go too crazy with the cheese whiz there. So in this case, we've got a dire form. And the nice part about this is not only does it get bigger, let's say the smaller pets and they hit that larger size, it takes on the attributes of that larger size. So in the case of going from medium to large, you've got an entire body hit chart for that character, and suddenly they become dramatically tougher and harder to kill, much more strong, much more damage absorbing. And then of course your attacks get +1 to damage. You know, the mod slot you spend to turn it into a dire form, you get back, so it negates it. Um, and then of course it has all access to all the larger size, you know, uh, installs, abilities, all that fun stuff. So yeah, doing pets is pretty fun. Having that dire, your best buddy fighting with you, whether that be some sort of dragon or bear or elk or whatever. You have so many options that you can run with. Yeah, and then there's tons of things that you can add to it, right? Like we've got different kinds of wings. You can actually be flying on the back of one of your mounted pets, if you want. In our case, we had, you know, we had the saddle, which is a default thing you can just add to the creatures that are big enough. But you know, we had this bracing and rigging that allowed you to mount a heavy machine gun on top of it. So if you've ever seen Warhammer, almost like that, the Kroot Hound, where they're sitting on the back of it, it's like that visually. You know, different plating to make him tougher. Like I think he was super tanky. I made him very tough. So yeah, he was. It's like it was. I think we were in a mission before it ended, but I think he's at 12 AP per segment, 10 HP there, and that can get even farther. So you're looking at each segment has a health pool of 22, and that is huge in this game. Let's see what else do we put him. We got our dire form, duraplating, so that gave him that extra 2 armor. Or 8 armor points, pardon. He starts with 2, and then we have so he also hits with acid. So I have him buffed, his claws and teeth like do acid damage, so it melts armor. So yeah, he can spit acid, all kinds of stuff. So he's basically just a giant tank that spits acid to get through all of your opponents. Like it's so much fun to play. And then of course my character with him was Cord, and he is a sprawl doc, but he's a chem chef. And he was and this was late in a campaign, so I had a lot to work with. But so not only does he have like this big shield, and he can inject, he has a pistol that shoots injection rounds for those pharmaceuticals, so I can dose my allies or dose my pet to make my pet stronger to do those roles, whether that means more strength or durability or speed or all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's basic drones and pets, and we'll continue on to the next section. Well, thanks for watching this quick character breakdown on how to go about building a new character for House of Eidolons, along with some little extra sections for equipment and cybernetics, pets, drones, all kinds of fun stuff. We went through that here. So if you need to find more information about us, head over to eidolonsrpg.com. There you can find our Patreon. That has all the documents, and you can purchase the core rulebook there. And join us on Discord. We're always around. We love talking about this stuff. We love building characters and theory crafting and making cool combinations. And if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out. Again, the whole community is there to help folks learn and build and make some amazing stories. And we hope you can enjoy this cyberpunk TTRPG.